Okay, so the recording has started. If anybody does not want to be on screen, you are more than welcome to turn your cameras off. The more people that turn their cameras off, the bigger my image will show up on the recording. So I do like it when other people leave their cameras on, so it's not just a video of me talking. And let me let people in. So welcome to the February 2023 Interlibrary Loan Roundtable. I had to write down the year today, and I was so proud when I wrote down 2023 and got it right on the first try. We do have 3 agenda items, and we can tackle them in whatever order we want to, but the topics that were suggested to me were search tips and tricks in Clover, what paperwork people send out when they lend requests, who sends what, and why do you send it, and then replacement of lost and damaged items. I think I am going to start with the replacement of lost and damaged items first, just because I don't think that one's going to be a really long conversation. I was just asked to remind people that if you've lost or damaged an interlibrary loan, the agreement, if someone says yes, you can just replace it. The agreement is that the replacement has to be the same format as what was lost. I had a couple people email me and say that hardcover copies were lost, and someone sent in a replacement that was a paperback copy. So please, if they say yes, you can send a replacement, make sure that it's the same format. I don't know if anyone else has run into that. I only had 2 people tell me that in the last year, so I think it's not a super common error that's being made. No one else?
It's tricky sometimes to know when things are lost or because we yesterday at the Athenaeum did receive a book that was sent last fall, and it was requested in October. It was due in December, and it arrived yesterday. We had discussed it with the library, and that it was missing in action, and we were able to get another copy from another library, so the patron was served. But yeah, so sometimes things do show up. And yeah, so like handling that as well. This circumstance may not be the best example of because no action was taken, but what to do in those kind of circumstances? Like, how long do you wait? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is it
Yeah,
do you put an effort out in the listservs first?
I think asking on the listservs is a good choice. If it's something going through the courier, I am always happy to request that they do a bin sweep to see if they can find it, and sometimes that helps. Sometimes it's missorted and bounces around for a few weeks, which is frustrating for both libraries involved. But yeah, I think how long you wait depends on how the lending library feels about it and what their policies are. And Betsy has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a little anecdote because we had a patron who took a book out through interlibrary loan that was due back in July. And despite repeated follow-up, the book never returned. And so when we were coming to the end of the calendar year, we, as a borrowing library, decided that the book was lost and provided a replacement copy. And imagine my shock when it showed up yesterday at our library. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I'll just say it's hard to know, right? You just have to at some point make a decision.
Yeah, that one's hard. At that point, you wonder, do you bill the patron? Do you just call it a wash? That's a hard one to decide on.
Yeah, and we know a little bit about, we know the family circumstances of some of our patrons, not all, and we've had a lot of housing instability in our area, in part due to COVID, like COVID programs that have changed or shifted. And so we've had a lot of non-returned items due in part to people just moving suddenly, and library books are the thing that doesn't always make it back.
Right. Marie and Warren.
Hi, I'm having some internet connection issues, so I'm sorry if this isn't coming through well. I've also had the issue where a library has never responded to my invoice for a replacement item. And
Oh,
I don't know how much I want to bug a library. I totally understand it, the issues that can come up of replacing something, but I definitely have some outstanding things out there from the last 2 years that have never been, the library has never responded. On the other hand, I have also returned something that was damaged, and I've put a note on it to the library, said, please invoice me, and I've never heard from them. So
I think at that point the weight is on them to send the invoice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do with libraries that don't respond to an invoice. I once had a school library that did not respond, and I ended up sending the invoice to the principal of the school. But I think it depends on maybe how much you really want them to pay the invoice and replace the item. Noreen said maybe we have not gotten the invoice, which is always a possibility. It depends on if it's sent by mail or email. I would go with the approach of email it, mail it, follow up with a voicemail, and then I'm not sure. Has anyone else found like a good solution for that, for libraries not responding to invoices?
One time I included there was a library who requested a new item and I just put it in the courier, the
Oh,
information. It wasn't an invoice, but just like, we're looking for this item. And yeah, so.
that is one way to make sure they get that, because if they mark the item as received, you know that the request or invoice has also arrived. Betsy.
Sorry, muted. I've had really good luck just calling and talking to people, because I think it is true that things get lost in the mail, or they end up at the bottom of the stack of papers on the desk. So I've had the best. And also in reaching us, like in getting, and getting through to our library, I feel like that's also been the most effective for others. But I know that we also had a circumstance a while ago where the treasurer of our board stepped down, and there was just this sort of prolonged shuffling around of responsibilities and things while the new treasurer was put in place. And an invoice totally fell through the cracks in that later circled back much later and, was worked out. But it was this moment of like, oh God, that was like months ago. But that was ultimately resolved with a phone call, thankfully.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes with the changing of people, like when the new trustees are voted in, or if it's a municipality and there's a new treasurer or staffing changeover, that happens to everyone sometimes. But I think you're right, and a follow-up phone call is the next best step. Any other comments on lost items, replacements, invoicing? Is it generally not a big problem, just sometimes pops up?
A library marked one of our items as lost that we returned, but they never contacted us. I just don't know if they just wrote it off, or I don't know. Like, I just happened to notice that something was marked lost and on the Clover the quest manager's kind of screen. And I thought that was interesting. I never followed up with that. I should make a point to it, but I don't know if they just determined it was an older item and I don't know. Like, some libraries are like, oh, we were going to weed it anyway, or the condition was bad, or
Yeah,
but-
if we have something like that, we mark as lost, but we put a note in the lender's notes saying, we just discarded this or something like that. There
Well,
might
I
be a
wouldn't
note
have
in the
thought
lender's
to look
note.
for that. Yeah. Yes, right. I can check that now. But I wouldn't have thought to like follow up. Like if we mark a return, I'm kind of like, oh, it's sent back. Eventually maybe you look at complete at one point during the year, maybe and delete things. But like as a practice, yeah. Unless I had
Yeah.
noticed it went into that status that was different.
Huh.
And yeah.
I know, normally you would follow up. Okay.
Well, it could be April, like the contact information that is, I know that Athenaeum has the updated information in Clover and on our system of Vocal. Oops, sorry, I'm not on screen. But I don't know what it is in Koha Catamount or how it's listed in other systems that may exist out there where people are also looking. And I know it's important that we do, if there's a staff changeover or every year, to look at that information and make sure it's correct. But there might be multiple forms out there that people are trying to contact. So maybe someone did contact, but it's important to have that everything try to be consistent if possible. But I know that some libraries can't change another ILS, then they're
Right.
unaware. And then the automatic emails also go to that address too.
Yeah, you're right. I've gotten
like, who's
emails from
responsible for that?
out-of-state libraries saying, well, we emailed this email address. I was like, well, that email address hasn't existed for at least 5 years. So here's our new one. But yeah, because if you can keep it up to date in Clover, but if people are going by what's in their ILS, they may not have updated.
Or
Yes,
other ways.
Marie,
Or
the
through their
Val's emails. Oh, we have a couple hands up. Rutland. Anyone in Rutland? Your hand is up, but you are mute. You're not muted. But I can't hear anyone talking. Is your microphone muted in a different way? Oh, your audio isn't working. Do you want to put something in the chat and I can read it out? Or does audio not working mean that you also can't hear me? Okay. Betsy, you also have your hand up.
That's a mistake. I'm going to lower it.
Okay. Okay, so Rutland said that 2 problems occurred. Let me see. I will wait for more updates. Okay. Oh, and Noreen said, speaking of complete, how come the out-of-state ILLs sometimes say complete before I know they have gotten it by mail, or the total opposite and it is never marked complete? Do you mean ones that you loan out of state or ones that you borrow from out of state? Ones that you have borrowed from out of state. So when you mark it as returned, we go into OCLC World Share and mark it as returned so that the lender know it's coming back to them. And then we mark it as complete in Clover. Otherwise, we don't really have, we would have to check our OCLC list to see if they have marked it as checked in every single day, and that would be navigating through about 300 requests every day to see if they have marked it as complete, and we just do not have staffing or time for that. So generally, once you mark it as returned in Clover, we mark it as returned in OCLC, and then we mark it as complete in Clover. Otherwise, it's just a level of double checking in both systems that we just can't support. So it does mean that every once in a while, if one has not gotten back to the lending library, they contact us, and so we have to bring it up with you after that. So it's marked as complete in Clover, but maybe it never actually made it back, or maybe it's bouncing around in the USPS system somewhere. I have had luck with tracking numbers. If you put them right into the borrower or lender notes in Clover, it makes it easier for me to check on where maybe they are bouncing around. But yes, that is why. It's because we work in two systems and we can't double check where the 300 plus are that have been returned at any given point. And Rutland followed up. They asked if anyone has had anything damaged by the courier. I know that there have been some DVDs on occasion that if they aren't put in extra packaging, get tossed around and then the case gets damaged. And there was one time a bin was left outside of a library and it rained. So that does happen on occasion. Have you been getting a lot of items that are damaged? Or has anyone gotten a large amount of items that are damaged by when they're being shipped in the courier? No. Okay. Generally, people let me know if they've received items that are damaged. I did have one that I also got an email from the courier one day where they said they were sorting and they found one courier bag that was soggy. And so they actually took the books out and arranged them so they would dry before they sent them to the borrowing library. So I thought that was kind of nice, and I was hoping that it wouldn't damage it. Oh, and Rutland said that the post office ran over an item and damaged it. And is there any recourse with the post office? I think it depends on the value of the item. I don't know what generally there's really not. I haven't had much luck with any of that. Has anyone had any luck with getting any kind of refund from the post office? I mean, I've gotten those ones where they send you like the cutout of the address label in a little baggie and say the item was damaged in transit and it's just disappeared. Jennifer says their post office is a nightmare too. They send your outgoing items back to you.
Wait, we had that happen and we changed our labels because we were having them. So we had the one library's name that was horizontal and one that was vertical, and we stopped doing that. Even though it is pre-printed that way, we cut it up because we were finding that the system at the post office, the computer wasn't, or something machine wasn't reading that. So that might help.
Our mailing labels are still
irritating for us. Yeah, because we're right next
ours
to the
are
post
the
office.
same way with our address printed here and then the outgoing address printed here. But our packages also get sorted through BGS at the state first, so they're processed that way. And Betsy put in the chat related to courier, she protects vulnerable items with padded envelopes, but has noticed that a small book put in a large bag can get shifted around a lot. So she rubber bands books to avoid damage. So I guess some of it is in which size bag you choose as well. Kelly says that the post office has brought their outgoing packages back to her as well. And someone has Rutland, their hand is down. Okay. So post offices are bringing back packages. That's not helpful.
That's puzzling.
I wonder if I can
Does
find
it say
someone at the
library
post
mail?
office.
Or like clearer writing or larger writing, or it may not be us at all, but
We did switch.
does it say library mail on it? I don't know.
Yeah, we were using ones that were from like a library source, not post office. And he said, and I was handwriting them, which I had since changed to improve the rate, but he did say, he did give us suggestions for making it less likely to be returned, but it still happens occasionally.
What are some of the
were
tips?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Pitney Bowes and you see how they have theirs, so basically all vertical with the return address much smaller than the outgoing address. So it's a machine reading them, not a person. So it's just grabbing like whatever is the most readable text, I think, and in a position where it's expecting to see it.
So you want it to be like very visibly separate from your return address.
Yes, and the return address much smaller than the outgoing address.
And for a while, I think we were using, was it a rubber stamp that had a more uniform like font for our return address, and then handwriting the, where we were sending it to. And so definitely, if possible, Jen's been working to get to print the labels for the outgoing. And correct me if I'm wrong about that, Jen.
Yes, that's right. It was
Yeah.
mostly a problem on the handwritten ones, so we changed that.
Yeah. Oh, and then the last thing for us was we were using, these like Demco or one of the library suppliers labels that had all this like nonsense on the bottom about like library mail and this and that and different services that they used to have in the 1970s and that aren't relevant anymore.
It was a lot of unnecessary information
Yeah.
on the pre-printed
Yeah,
labels that
yeah.
we were using.
So.
Okay. Okay. I can also see if I can reach out to someone at the post office and see if there's any other tips that they can give me. And I can put all of this in our meeting notes so that everyone has this, since it sounds like it's a pretty common problem now. Machine reading. Okay.
Pennsylvania or something.
Thank you. Okay. Marie said that's exactly what they do if they don't have a label from the receiving library. They handwrite the outgoing address and stamp their address on a Demco or a library mail label. And they have never had any issue despite the many issues at the Warren post office. The little post offices have some trouble. Yeah, we also, we've had a combination of strategies, but we have pre-printed labels so that we don't stamp our address on there anymore. But if I do stamp, then I stamp way up in the corner and then the outgoing address is way down in the middle of the package. But I am going to put together all of the tips and see if I can get more from the post office so that if people are running into this issue, hopefully we can cut down on it a lot, because that's very annoying. Okay. First page of notes.
Wait, can I just ask, does that mean you have to pay for the postage twice, or does the post office accept it back from you?
Sometimes they accept it back, but for the ones where I was clearly unknowingly contributing to the problem, like if I got one that I sent out following their tips and still came back, I would send that back. He did send a couple, but for the ones in the interim that I'd handwritten that came back, I did just eat that and then change the system. So it depends, I guess, is the answer.
That's just such a bummer.
That is.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
yeah, then the mail costs are a lot, becoming more and more stacked over courier, you know.
And I did notice that go up pretty significantly with a new rate change. Like that's really,
Yes.
we usually spend about
Um,
100, 105 per month. And this past month, I think it switched in the middle and it was already 117 for January.
I rejoined now.
and Kelly said she never complained, so she just double paid. Oh,
And that's, yeah, it feels unfair because you don't always know why.
yeah, if they're just sending it back and not actually including a note of why they aren't mailing it out.
Or why they rejected it, or
Mhm.
and then yeah, and then you have to take the additional staff effort to sometimes get it over there, because I know that our post office has limited hours, and so it's harder on staff to get there sometimes.
Noreen said that they had a couple come back. She was using bags with other writing on it, like in Amazon, and she was trying to cover extra writing and barcodes with white paper. I have a heavy duty Sharpie marker I do
Right.
that with.
I cover with paper, but I also do Sharpie too. But I avoid using Amazon if I can. We do use recyclable materials, and I would prefer sending that through the courier with an item that's like a DVD maybe. So then, you
Mhm.
know, it's still protecting the item, but it's not like could get lost out there in the mail system.
Mhm.
Or I try to save whatever the library has provided, but I work in a team for interlibrary loans, so it's maybe not always possible. Or other people are using materials. But
Mhm.
that's a good strategy, especially for out of state, just in case, you know, you want to have that address. I know you can always reach out to the Department of Libraries, but you have a lot going on, so
That's
so
okay.
back up.
And Rutland said they've had some courier damage and some post office damage, and asked if the borrower is always responsible for damage. And yes, the borrower is actually. It's in the Interlibrary Loan Code, both in Vermont and nationally. Oh, and Kelly said that she saw something very cool the other day. The shipper had turned the Amazon bag inside out so that all of the information on it is on the inside. And that could also work. Depends on what kind of Amazon bag it is. They have a few different ones. And Rutland has their hand up. Is the audio fixed, or do you want to put more in the chat? Hand down. Okay. Is there anything else people want to add in about this? I like all of the tips for changing or rearranging mail labels to get them to go through the first time. And I will also reach out to the post office to see if our local one can offer any more tips. Okay. So since we're talking about shipping things, this seems like a good time to segue into what paperwork people send with their interlibrary loan requests. We revisit this periodically because people sometimes change what they do. I know some people send out the book straps, some send out just a due date, some just send their return label. We're one of those. And it seems to vary a lot from library to library. Noreen said it is more work for me to make more paperwork. That is true. And for us, we try to put as much information as possible in the Clover request. The only time it's a problem if there's either little or no paperwork is if it's missorted or mislabeled and it just shows up as a mystery item at a library. If you do get mystery items, you can always email me. I can look them up pretty quickly and figure out what has happened with them. But yes, so paperwork. Who does what, and why did you choose that?
It'd be great to do like a poll, because maybe not here, but like, so I can see what other libraries are doing, like instead of just one person speaking, or a couple people speaking, it's like hard to get a sense of like the whole population.
I could, yeah, we could do a poll. I can make a survey for it. Rutland said that the due date on straps and stickers do not jive with the due date for the patron, which can cause confusion. We give our patrons the same due date that the item has, because that is the date that it's due back to the borrowing library. So that has helped cut down on some of the confusion. We get more confusion when the due date in Clover and what is on the item don't match. And so that one's a little trickier. Noreen said if they get a mystery item, they also call the library it came from to find out where it should really go. Tammy says they just include the due date. And Wendy said at one of the round tables it was requested they include paperwork. So she prints out the request and puts it inside. Adrian does that too. Noreen said they put the due date and the mailing label to come back.
No, I was saying something else. I wasn't agreeing with what you said about the lending, when you get a due date, that it's due back to the library the same date.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because that's ILL code.
Yes. More Free sends the sheet they print from Clover, and the due date is stamped on the slip in the back of the book. Kelly says they have a hard time changing the due date in Clover to match the stamp. And Timmy said they include a shipping label. We do have a document that can help, depending on the ILS, can help match up the due date in Clover and the due date in your ILS automatically, but sometimes it's just not possible because the ILS calculates including days that you're closed, and Clover just goes with straight number of days, so it can be tricky.
Well, that can be played with in the participant record a little bit.
It can.
I mean, maybe, not perfectly like on the holiday, it might not quite match, but for the most part, it will align automatically.
Yes.
That's all we have.
Or it's usually within like a few days. If it's that close, it's not that big a deal. If it's somehow like 2 weeks off, that's more of a problem. Anne said they also try to remember to include a shipping label. And Gary prints the ILL request and tapes the Koha slip to it to match due dates. And that works. I know that at the ILL roundtable, when we had talked about making sure to include paperwork, people were requesting that at a minimum, just the due date and the return shipping label was helpful. Is there any other really important information that you would prefer? I mean, we're not all going to be able to go to the same amount of paperwork that's included, but at a minimum, it seems like due date and return label are what people would like to see inside of the request.
Well, the name of the library, maybe to and from, or where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wendy
there are some
asked if they could
people
include
that
the
don't
request number.
participate in, then it's identified as a Clover request too, because sometimes we get items at the Athenaeum that are intended for other libraries, and so we do send it back by courier if they are on courier, but we want to identify that that is not alone, and that so they don't search in Clover for those items that they know that they were dropped by the book drop, and then they can do whatever they want. If they want to talk to the patron or not talk with the patron, but at least they know how they were returned. And maybe why there's a delay, or if the patron says, I returned those, well, the mystery is solved. But some libraries don't participate in these roundtables, and they're continuing to practice older ways of doing things. So the notes on the listserv are helpful. Hopefully those libraries are seeing that. But some, I think, do not participate for whatever reason, but I think could be like, oh, we've been doing ILL for a long time. I've got this. I'm going to continue my way. They don't know that how it may impact other libraries
And some
or
of
what
them,
things are changing.
right? Some of them may have missed the announcements, but
Or they can't
some of
participate
them are also
capacity.
only in the library for a few hours a week and maybe just don't have time to add more. It
Right,
depends
staff
on the
capacity.
library. It sounds like what we could do is
Okay,
survey
whatever.
that asks what people currently include and what they would like to see included. That would be helpful
Project
for
group.
them. And Kelly asked, isn't it a requirement to include a return label? It is. It's in the best practices. And Noreen said, can we send the request number on the back of the return label? That would probably be very convenient. And Betsy has her hand up.
Huh? Oh,
Hi, yeah. I'm the only person at our library who
you
manages
you've
interlibrary
got the
loan, and I'm not a
exacto
full-time
knife.
employee. And so it's hard
Mhm.
for me sometimes. I really appreciate it when there's the
Gotta
piece
cut it
of
with a blade.
paper, like the book strap or something, because then if something comes to me, I don't have to spend that much of my time solving that mystery. I can either, like Adrienne said, put it in the courier so it gets where it's going. I know who to call. It's easier. I know, April, you're always super responsive and helpful, but it's nice when I can handle it myself and not have to bother you with that. And so I've also noticed that sometimes when I contact another library, like let's say I get a book, it just has the library stamp in it, no other information. I don't know where it's going. I may call them and they have someone who's a part-time worker who does interlibrary loan, and they're not going to be in until a day when I'm not working. And then there's just this whole other thing. Whereas if I just have the piece of paper that says where it's coming from, where it's going to, or something like that, it makes it that much easier. And we've also had an unfortunate incident where someone removed a book strap from an ILL and returned it to the drop box of a library who wasn't us, the borrowing library, or the lending library.
Wow.
And it was just a nightmare. Whereas like one little piece of paper, and I know some people remove them and la la la, but like any help is appreciated.
Yeah, in that circumstance, I would, next time I lend to that patron, I would probably highlight the part that says, please do not remove the book strap or label, or remind them in person, or tell them somehow. But they may never borrow again. Maybe it's not a big problem, but yeah, occasionally things do get taken off for whatever reason. It could be like a family and the parent didn't want that on there for their child, or they wanted to see the artwork, or who knows, but they need to put it back. But
And not just drop it in a random return bin at a library.
well,
I did have someone email me once and say, well, I borrowed this book from you. Can I return it to this library? And I said, no, you can't. And Marie said that so many of her items come back with her courier label that she included it. And she really appreciates it when the courier label is there, and it surprises her when other libraries don't use hers. And Noreen said the same. We have occasionally gotten items back with our return label in, and I think it's a practice that should just be continued because there are so many that appreciate it when that is included. When we first started, we did print out some for every library. So it's possible that someone did that and they stockpiled some, but it's always nice to have them. Beth at Fairleigh said she loves a return label. So, Wendy, you have your hand up.
We actually, we stick our return label in the same pocket as the label. So it's flipped around backwards. And then let's say Lanford, because I don't know why that came to my brain, but they're on the top and ours is in the back. So we'll put those in. And then when they come back to us, we just take ours and flip it so that it's there waiting. It's not extra work. It's just, we're taking out, you guys give us yours and they're there. We just flip them around. We'll okay, Rain.
If all
When they
libraries could do
come, yeah,
that,
when they come in,
it's
we
helpful.
take out the label, we flip ours around and leave it in the envelope, in the, you know, in the pocket.
Mhm.
And then we just staple your return label onto the paperwork, so that when the book is returned, we take that label off, stick it back in, and our label is already there waiting, so that you have one to use when it comes back.
Yeah, that there's a lot of merits to that way, and if we all did that, that would be helpful. But because some libraries do not do that, and sometimes old labels linger in that space, then I have to double check to make sure it's the right library. And also for a library like ours, not super big, but we do have a greater volume, and we couldn't save all our courier bags for that purpose because we need to have them accessible. So we take them all out when we
Yeah,
receive
well,
the bin. So, but I
oh,
like your thinking. I'd like if
yeah,
we
well,
all look for in one
I'm not
place.
using the double-sided, because I see those coming in. I'm not using the double-sided. It's actually a single label. And we know that everything that I send out is going to need a label. So our label is in every single one of our envelopes in the pocket.
So it's like pre-prepping them for shipping.
Exactly, but we're prepping them while we have them in our hands, so it only takes like a millisecond. You're just flipping it around from the receiving. So when I get it in, and there are two, so there will be two labels inside that pocket. There'll be the return label and the label from the library that it was received. So we take the library that it was received from and stick it on our paperwork, but then we flip our label around so it's there and ready to go. The only time I ever have to do anything with envelopes and removing those labels is when I have too many and I have to send some to you guys.
Okay. Betsy, your hand is up.
I'm sorry. I just keep forgetting to take it down again. But
That's okay.
I was just going to say, I put my comment in the chat, but basically I have a tiny amount of space for storing the ILL materials. And so I'm constantly weighing the pros and cons of like saving labels, whatever, and trying to stay on top of new labels, new libraries, changes to labels, while also not wanting to be throwing away 8 labels when I just need one, you know what I mean? If I'm
Mhm.
printing out a fresh sheet of labels. And also in terms of keeping materials moving, like Adrienne was saying with the bags, like to keep things moving, everything has to be constantly moving. I can't like afford to store things
Right.
pre-ready, even though I think that would be amazing. That's all. And now I will lower my hand. Sorry.
I mean, this does remind me of Marie's courier label storage strategy, which I loved, which was the baseball card binder. And each library had its own spot in the baseball card sorter. I loved that idea. It almost made me wish I had baseball cards that I could just repurpose a binder for.
Well, maybe one of those, yeah. You'll never know what you can find online through Front Porch Forum or other
Or
means. Or maybe
our
somebody at
new
the state.
it could be our new interlibrary loan promotional item. We'll print interlibrary loan courier labels on the binder and send it out.
Yeah. Ours are filed
Okay.
like an archival box with the alphabetically
Yeah,
listed
we
by
have ours in a
library.
card catalog.
Yeah, and ours is
Yeah.
about the size of a card catalog.
Mhm.
That's cool. What else is in the card catalog? Is it other things or just?
It's our mailing card catalog. So it has a section with mailing labels sorted by library, 2 sections for courier, and then there's an extra one that has our labels that we can put those in outgoing items. I have not actually looked through all the other drawers, so it's possible there are old cards in there.
Oh.
Okay. So it sounds like what I need to do is put together that survey of what information people need, what paperwork they use now, and then we can look at the results as a group in our next meeting and maybe make some updates to the best practices based on what we find.
That list. Oh, on that list, so people with receipt printed, because that's what we have at the desk immediately available. Our printer is not working at that particular desk, and it's worked out really well. Sometimes they get a little bit faded with the thermal chemistry, or but they seem to, the barcodes are still working when they come back, so it's amazing. Or with the number is important as well. If the barcode wasn't working, but yeah, so the book straps that we sent for information of the library that's sending it and the library that's receiving it and the due date that's part of Clover, all together. And we, of course, one thing that we didn't mention was on the labels putting the ship date. Some libraries are not doing that, which is
I do have an
helpful, I think, for the
update on
courier.
that. Yes.
Oh.
So I know that it's always helpful if we have like, because every once in a while we end up with this batch that just mysteriously takes an eternity to show up at the correct library. They have updated their sorting procedures, and we seem to be hitting that less. So library, he said you don't have to put the shipped date anymore. It's not required. They do appreciate it, but it is no longer required.
It's useful for us, sometimes just anecdotally, because on the courier statistics form, there's always like a question about the turnaround time. Well, anecdotally, you can say, oh, this is shipped on, February 2nd, and it's only February 6th, or, like that, only a couple days. Or so it is kind of anecdotally helpful. I mean, you can always look in Clover and do analysis, but you could sometimes when I've had more time, I've received the courier bin and I put them in order and just kind of understand which libraries were receiving it first, just anecdotally, just interesting. I just wish I was able to see the October one. Working in a team, I was wondering when that was sent, or if it was something happened.
Right. And Rutland put in the chat a random question. In Clover, when does an item get moved from shipped to not received? And Marie has the correct answer. It does depend on each library's setting. So every individual library can set a in-transit number of days. And for items that you lend, if you mark it as shipped, you can set that for, you could do 0, which would be bad, but you can do 0 to up to any number of days. You could do 90. I think the default was set at 14. So how quickly something moves to not received depends on what that library has changed it to. Yes, Adrian's right. It's in the participant record. Marie said Pearson's must be very short because their items always go to not received. It depends on how much they want
like
to
that.
track their items. If
it might
you
be
want
a holdover
to know,
from mail too.
It
Sorry,
might.
Because, or they're not aware, because what it does for libraries like mine is that when it goes into the not received status, we cannot see the due date. And then we have to make it received. And what happens at that point is that an automated email is sent to the patron saying that their item's ready. We have that configured. So that's an additional way of contact for the patron. But we've had patrons show up like wanting their items right away. So we kind of know that, and we planned around it, but it's a hassle, especially if we have a lot of not received items that we kind of have to like work quickly to get it out there, or let the patron know, because we are a walking library. We have lots of patrons that live very close to us, so it's possible.
Yeah, I think the shortest time period I have seen for that is someone has set at 4 days. So if they sent it to someone and then let's say they sent it in
That's
the
why I was thinking
courier
this.
on Tuesday to a library whose courier stop is also Tuesday, it means that by Sunday it's moved to not received.
Yeah,
So-
and there's some and I don't know, there are a few libraries are open on Sunday, but I don't know if the courier delivers on that day, but it seems a little bit unrealistic for all items to be delivered in that short of time. I mean, some do. We have one that showed up in the same day, but that's rare. It's sometimes they take a week or 2 weeks, depending on your library too, especially if you have deliveries that are multiple times during a week versus deliveries once a week. Like our library has once a week, so if you mark it shipped and we happen to miss the courier, then it's a little bit more of time to get to us.
Mhm. Okay, so I think what I can do is I can include in our meeting notes just an explanation of what that setting does and how it moves items to not received, and then people can double check their settings.
If they're mostly a mail library, that makes sense to me, though, like having a shorter due date, because you do want to watch things. Because that's a trigger then, oh, okay, maybe it hasn't gotten there. So there might be some circumstances where it is appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
and not for every library.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have an hour and 10 minutes left. Do we want to start the conversation about search tips and tricks in Clover? Because I had a couple of people who had asked for that to be on the agenda. We'll just move into that one. I had one person who said that their search results have been not as good in the last month or so. So I was going to review what I do for better finding of specific items, and I can share my screen for that. And then I was hoping that other people would also chime in with their tips. Okay. Meeting window. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So generally when I am searching in Clover, I just leave it on this all headings search, and I can plug in the title or the author. The trick with the all headings search is it functions as a keyword search. And the results you get depend on the specific connection to catalogs. Clover runs on the Z3950 connection. Still not entirely sure what Z3950 stands for, but it is the connection to the catalogs database. And so every individual catalog includes different fields when it does a keyword search. If you are not getting the results that you want, the best strategy is to switch to an author or title search. I have also had really good luck with ISBN, because those are generally fields that every ILS has been including. The ISBN is hit or miss. Not all of them include that connection to the MARC record. Author and title work. ISBN is the one that I have used to get the most specific results. So if I have one that I'm running into trouble with, that is the search that I switch to. Does anyone else have specific tricks they're using if they are running into trouble finding a specific item?
I sometimes will use author.
Mhm.
I'll search on the author.
And Beth at Fairley says ISBN is her go-to when she's coming up short. As also mine. I generally go with all headings. If that gives me too many results, then I switch to title. And if that is just craziness in my search results, I go author and then ISBN. My general approach. And yes, Beth said, make sure you're using ISBN 13, not 10. And Marie pointed out that ISBN is more hit or miss with older items, and it definitely is. Wendy says she goes with the title search, then you do the add to search results, and that one is very important. So let me, here, I'm gonna look up the one that I have been using because it's the Able Book Club book. So you'll see that when you search, what it does is it populates the search results with the first responses in a set period of time, which I believe is the first 5 seconds. And this is how they updated it to stop that horrible flickering effect that Clover had when it first started, because that was just live updating the whole time. So what they do is it populates with what it gets back in the first 5 seconds, and then it finishes the search in the background, and you can click add additional results. If this is the book that you want, you can actually just click on that and you can see what it is. This one, Grand Central Publishing is usually large print, so I'm not sure why that's not showing up as large print. But what it's going to do is take the ISBN and build a lender list based on that ISBN. And if this is not the format that you want, you can either go back to your search results, or if you had clicked the add to additional results, it would refresh and it would give you this. So you can do an audiobook format. These are not combined because the title is different. But yes, Lee, your hand is up.
When you're here and you pick your book and there's 20 libraries or whatever, and it comes up and they're listed on the left-hand side. Is there any way we can tell which? What I would like to know is I'd rather borrow it from a Clover library than a non-Clover library.
Courier?
Yeah, a courier library.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell from that screen that comes up after this one here.
Okay, so if you click on what's going to happen, let's say we just wanted this book, is checked out in a lot of places. So this one's a courier library. So you can see where they're coming from. What it's going to do anyway is it's going to use your preferred lender list. So if you click on this and it has courier and non-courier libraries that own it, it's going to rank the courier libraries above non-courier, and it will send it to courier libraries first.
I don't think I have a preferred lender list. I'm not sure I ever did that.
Okay, I can help you with that.
Okay. I mean, I just click on the one, and if it's one that I'm going to pay postage, I go back and click on another one until I find one that I'm not going to pay postage.
Yeah, so it should be doing that automatically, and I can help you make sure that's set up right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nori needs the preferred lender list info too. Okay. Yeah, and Kelly said sometimes library will put a note in the request that says courier only. Lending libraries only see that if they open up the detail view. So the preferred strategy is to use the preferred lender list so that it does go there. There is also a blocked lender list. So if you only want your requests to go to courier libraries, you can set that up to block it. Rellin asked, does the catalog record always show that an item is a graphic book or a large print? It should, but honestly, it depends on what's in the MARC record. I am finding a few that have, like this one. I'm not sure if this is a large print according to the publisher, but it's not showing as a large print. It's showing as book format, and I have to look into it to see if that means that it's not set as a large print format in the catalog, or if it's just not recognizing that it is large print in Clover, which it should. I'm actually going to screenshot that one because that is a good example that I can use. There. Noreen says she always checks the notes on the request, and some of them do. We usually do as well. So I send out the preferred lender list on the courier listserv, but I can also include it with the notes from this meeting just so that everyone has it again. Are there any other search strategies that people use, or have you, there's different ways that you can group the search results? Has anyone found this amazing way of having the search results display that works best for you? Or search strategies, either one.
Well, using the limiters, but I wanted to make one point that you said about the preferred lender list. Occasionally, I know that April, you will send out new ones. So that it kind of shakes the deck, so not all the libraries are getting, different libraries are getting prioritized. Maybe it doesn't matter so much, but because there's also the variable of Clover does go with what you pick as long as it's with your preferred list, I think. There is some elements of variables, but yeah, making that list, changing it up is important. So all the libraries are kind of shouldering the lending equally if possible. It probably isn't, but so that might have to be changed too, or it can be customized, which is.
Yeah, some people do customize the preferred lender list like Wendy did, and we have her presentation recorded as well. Oh, and Kelly also asked, what does it mean when it says 0 of 1 available? And I can talk more about that. So there are two reasons why it might say 0 available, like right here. This one, because apparently there's a collection that is not mapped correctly. So I would need to look into that too. But so this one, like it says status, 0 copies available. It means that the Sherburne one is most likely checked out. There is another reason why it would say 0 available. And it is again related to the Z3950 connection, the mysterious connection. If a library does not store if the ILS does not store the status, if it's checked in or out in the MARC record field somewhere, that information is not transmitted. And so then it will show as 0 copies available. But what the system does do is it will still send that request. If there is no status information coming through the Z3950 connection, it is going to say 0 copies available in the search results because it can't determine that. But when it builds the lender list, if status information is not available, it is going to send it to that lender anyway. Because I like to think of it as an optimistic system, and it will say, well, we're not sure if it's available, so we're going to ask you anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I thought that, there's something that wasn't going to be able to be borrowed, but I did reach out to that library because they were one of the few lenders or the only lender, and they were like, yeah, we're lending, but it just had looked like in Clover that the request wouldn't go through. So yeah, just send it anyway and see what happens.
Yes. And
Hopefully
Kelly
it works
also said,
optimistically.
What if, yes, an optimistic interlibrary loan system.
Mm.
Kelly also said, what if the book isn't Clover, but no library is listed? That one is a little trickier. Sometimes, like the one up here, where it says institution not provided, it could be that it was a temporary record or it was not mapped correctly, or it's in a collection that doesn't exist anymore.
Could you click on it, April, to see if
Yeah.
it's in the record? I know it happens with like Haskell Free Library has networks beyond theirs. And
They
sometimes,
do.
or St.
Usually,
Michael's College.
yes. So St. Michael's has a collection that is an on-demand ordering one for students. So that one also does this same thing. But this means that this one is just not set up correctly. What I do, because I am almost as optimistic as the Clover system, is I go to multi-copy and see what happens with the lender list. Sometimes it's that it just that specific mark record is wonky. But you'll see it's found 78 lenders so far. So it's building the list based on the ISBN. So even if that one is a weird record that's not displaying correctly, there's still a lot of lenders available. The multi-copy one is how I make sure things are still functioning as they should. So we have all of that. Yes, and Noreen says, good to know. Sometimes only 1 or 2 libraries have the book and it says unavailable. And so she'll contact the library now. So you can contact the library. You can try a multi-copy lender form to see if it builds a list, which is also helpful. And then Rutland is actually asking about able titles. Able titles are not included in Vocal because Department of Libraries is not in Vocal. They're in Verso, and you can borrow them from us because we have all of the Able Library large print is in our Verso catalog. So you can search a specific title and request it from us. Another option is you are always welcome to borrow from Able directly. They do have their own catalog and they have wonderful people working there who can help set up a deposit collection or help locate large print books. The staff at Able is amazing. So it depends on if you're looking for a large quantity of large print to supplement your collection, or if you are looking for just a specific large print book.
So the requests, the items from the Able Library, from the state libraries, they're not showing up in Clover?
They do, yes, because they're in our catalog.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yes.
I guess I got confused when you were saying about Vocal versus, oh, you mean just like when you search your ILS? You mean? It just happens to be part of it?
Yeah, so
For some
Rutland
libraries.
asked in the chat if Able Library titles are included in Vocal, and they are not, because we are not in Vocal. We have our own catalog. So I just wanted to clarify that part. So our catalog, which is Verso, includes our collections and the Able collections. And since our catalog is connected to Clover, it means that any of the large print items can be requested through Clover.
Yeah, through
Yes.
the library, through the just normal means, that we don't have to do a blank ILL for in-state
Right.
option. Okay.
And Tracy's hand is up.
Hi, and apologies again for joining late. I had a question, but I don't know if you already covered it earlier in the meeting, having to do with the participant record and people's or libraries' lending policies, and how sometimes you'll get the opposite of what we were just talking about, where the item will say that it's available and say it might be only 1 or 2 libraries, say sometimes it's only 1 library that has this item available according to, you know, what you can see in Clover, but then it ends up going to VSS. And when you look at the history, you see that the library that had it available, that it skipped right over it. And that whenever we've investigated, it's turned out that there was a mismatch in the lending policy where, say, the library said they did not loan DVDs, but they do loan visual material, or vice versa. And that they would say they don't loan audiobooks, but they do loan audio CDs. And then the way that the item was cataloged, there was this discrepancy. So it shows up as available, but really it's something that the library is not going to lend. I was curious if, sorry, that's kind of long. I was hoping you'd interrupt me if you already have talked about it.
We have not, but I'm gonna bring up on the screen so that everyone knows the lending policy that you're talking about.
Wait,
So
well,
when
it's
you,
set up in Clover, maybe, or it's not set up in Clover, you know.
it depends.
Yeah, right.
So
That's
in the participant record,
Yeah, I was referring to the one that's set up in Clover. Whenever this has
yes.
happened, when we've been trying to borrow something that, say, only one library has, it has been the case that um, that if the item looks available, but then the library gets automatically skipped over, that there was a mismatch where they said, well, like I just described in their lending policy.
well, but
So
in the lending policy, did the library respond, or they just were just automatically skipped over because
They
it
were
was set up and
automatically,
blocked in Clover?
yeah, they were automatically skipped over. So
So
then,
yeah,
say, I would call
they
them and
did
say,
know.
yeah, and I would call them and
it's
say, so do you lend these things or not? Because in your policy, it kind of contradicts itself. Um, and then normally the case is that they don't lend, say they don't lend DVDs, and they maybe didn't mean to say that they do lend visual materials.
Oh yeah,
so
that definitely
yeah,
happens.
it depends on how it is labeled in their catalog. But it also connects to the lending policy in Clover. So you'll see let me get to the visual materials. Like there is a Blu-ray category and a DVD category, and keep going down. There's a film, and then you get to visual materials way down here. So let's say you say, yes, we lend visual materials. No, we do not lend DVDs. But then a video ends up in your catalog listed as a visual material.
Yeah, so this could be
It's,
catalog
Yes,
specific, and that
it
could
can
be just
be, yeah.
incidental.
Or you
right.
say, yes, we lend visual materials. And if you, I'm not sure what visual materials would be other than DVDs at this point. So if you don't lend DVDs, you may just want to double check that visual materials, DVDs, and Blu-rays are all marked as no, just so that it cuts down on some of the confusion.
If I
Yeah.
could add audiobook and audiobook CD. Oh, I'm trying to scroll. I'm trying to
Let me
scroll, and
find.
it's your screen. I can't scroll.
It's my screen. Yeah, I
But
can get up to this.
I think at the top you have a choice of both audiobook and audiobook CD, which
Yes.
yeah, audiobook cassette, and audiobook CD. And I mean, if those don't all have the same answer, that's gonna, and most of the time, if you don't loan audiobooks, you're not gonna loan the audiobook CD or the audiobook cassette either. But those aren't always matching. Anyway, it just helps cut down on confusion. And
Yeah.
Yes.
anyway,
So
thank
maybe
And
you.
that
try to
helps
make sure the formats match
stronger.
because they're split
Well, and that's
into a
stronger.
lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, like, I know that some library, that just doesn't help everyone, especially those who are not on the ILS that's for vocal, but some libraries have it written in the notes like, we will not lend. Now, of course, that's not going to stop Clover or anything, but that's one more place you could look.
I
And then the
am also,
flips,
I've
yeah, which
also
is not
been trying.
necessary. I'm not recommending it. Clover is the best because it blocks it. But completely.
I am trying to update some of the things in Clover so that collections that are non-lending are showing clearly in the search results that they are non-lending. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm actually, so to show you an example of this, I'm
Or
going to show
special
you.
collections.
Yes, I'm
would
going
be
to show
one.
you since I can't
But
think
maybe
of
it's
what's something
harder
that
to do
doesn't
that.
lend.
Because people do requests from like books that we had from like the beginning days of the Athenaeum, and they're in a particular housing location, but
Mhm.
I don't know how to block them completely from. But you know, incidentally, I could just policy problem or mark it in Clover so that the lending the borrowing library requesting library could
if everything in that specific
like if it was a
location
house
is
in the balcony.
yeah, if everything in a specific location is non-lending, I can map that in Clover and mark it as non-lending.
But I guess
So
it's
I'm
not.
gonna
Yeah, there
I'm
is other
gonna show
house there that
you.
is lending,
Yeah, I'm gonna show you
and we're
really
like the only lenders in
quickly
state for that. So I wouldn't want to
how
block.
the behind the scenes of Clover works, and I'm going to use. Okay, so Middlebury College lends a lot, but they have some items that are actually housed in a different location that cannot be lent. So Middlebury Institute. So I have the locations mapped, and under location in search results, this is what you will see. If it's not lending, I do not have their lending code in, so those requests automatically skip them. If it is lending, their code is here, those requests will go to them, and you'll see the location actually display. So if it's not, what I've been working on is adding this non-lending to specific locations where it's not lending so that it's very clear in the search results. It's in this location, but it's not lending. So you will not be able to borrow it from this library. I have the Haskell library set up that same way because they have a shared catalog with several other Canadian libraries, and they cannot lend the Canadian library items through interlibrary loan. Let me see if there is something that I can, let me show from their search results so that I
April,
can.
on the Haskell Free Library, if someone was a patron of that library, can they borrow from those networks? Is it like if
I'm
we had
not
a patron
sure.
here at the Athenaeum, I could drive up?
They, as far as I know, it would need to be a direct patron of the Haskell library. It could not be another library
Right, that's what I
borrowing.
mean, that they would.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is a James
But I
Patterson
was
book
wondering if like there's a
in
French
French.
book. That's the way to get it.
Yeah. So you'll see Canadian library non-lending for all of these. So it is set up to skip them automatically, but I wanted to make it, more clear. This is not just a random spot in a Vermont library. It's a Canadian library. They cannot send this item. So it's been the little change to the where to find it section that I've been trying to make. All right. Is there anything else about search results or search strategies? Or are there any other topics people wanted to talk about?
Well, the flip side of blocking things completely, we do like to see the request because then we can make a decision if we want to lend it or not, because it could depend. If an item has been on the, let's say it's a new item, it's been on the shelf for 4 months, not a lot of interest maybe here, or it's had run its course, and another library wants to use it, we want to be able to still like make that decision. It's probably rarer for certain collections to go out, but like some of our other collections, we do want them to be used, so we still want that decision. So it's opposite of what Tracy was saying at the Brownell Library, that sometimes you don't want to block new lending requests for 6 months completely, because then I can't respond to that. I could say, yes, we'll ship that or we'll supply that, or no, we will not supply, or to retry it. And here's the reason why, either to make it a reason, like a pull down menu in Clover, or to write something in the notes, like check back after 2 months, or give particular months, because then the library doesn't have to calculate that. But
Right.
like, we might be willing to lend later too.
Yes. And with Clover, between being able to map locations and the status, it's fairly easy to customize it for each library about what requests they do and do not want to see. So that's pretty helpful. Because I have some libraries that just never want to see requests for new items, and we can use the lending policy for that, or they have a new items location and we just mark those as non-lending. So it depends on the library, but generally I've been able to make the system work out what they do and do not want requests for.
Yeah. So then it's not really a problem if a library, not for a library to request a brand new item, because the other libraries have set the configurations, or they could say yes or no if they didn't set those configurations. Because sometimes people have been frustrated when they see, like, oh, a 2023 book or a 2022 book, and we just got this, and we want to keep it for our patrons first. I'm surprised they're requesting it so soon. It's only been a short time, or maybe it's been out for a little bit of time, but we just accessioned it. But we still want that, decision-making process. But so we should be less frustrated when other libraries are wanting something super new and super hot and getting
it
it.
Depends. I know the
But
best practices said, please wait a month so that at least processing can be finished before requesting. But other than that, what I heard from most libraries was, send us the request if it's available and our patrons are not like clamoring for it, we're happy to loan. But otherwise, just give people a few weeks at least to actually receive and process the title.
Or you could look at the ILS, that if you're in a shared network, you can look at the session date, and sometimes libraries have had things a little bit older, so I've targeted my requests first to them to prioritize, until the other libraries where it's newer, that they can have it for their patrons. So.
But every library has their own approach, and so far I have found Clover is a system that's flexible to help most of the time. Not always. It's an imperfect system, but I've yet to find a perfect interlibrary loan system. And I like that it's optimistic. All right.
April, hi.
Yes.
This is Jean and Jen at Brooks Memorial. We wondered if you had, at this point, any comment about what we're hearing about the State College Libraries and its implication for interlibrary loan.
I am very sad as someone who worked at the Vermont State College Library System. I can comment as not an official state employee. I am waiting to see where things go with the response that the system is getting, because it is not a favorable response. And stating that you can find everything digitally is incorrect and also not supported by copyright law. So, not, yeah, it is cutting off access to a large quantity of resources for both students at the schools, but also for all of Vermont, because the state colleges are good lenders.
Yeah.
And we've been losing different smaller college libraries. Marlboro is another one. I don't know the status too much about what's going on with Goddard or Sterling, but I haven't seen things.
Sterling still lends. Yep.
Okay.
Sterling actually also partnered with Craftsberry and is on the courier system.
Yeah.
And Middlebury lends a lot. And I hope to see that partnership continue, because that's an amazing
amazing.
support.
But then the weight is more on them.
It does.
Or it's on
That's
the
the
state
other
of
thing.
Vermont to do, in the state or out of state loans.
We've been talking about it a lot.
Burden,
So.
yeah. And they had some unique things at some of the colleges that, yeah. And also where are those collections going? We don't know.
They don't have,
But
we do not
did
know yet.
Yeah, what I read in one of the news articles was to be given to local municipal libraries, which
Who don't have shelf space,
who may not
or
have shelf space or capacity, or wants the items, or it doesn't fit their mission or community,
yeah, I think it
or
was.
we're not municipal at the Athenaeum. We are a nonprofit. So does that exclude us? I don't
And
know.
then the other one of the articles said that for department specific collections, they were going to give them to the department. I was like, it's not a library. I can promise those are going to disappear. So I see a lot of downsides and not enough positives in this entire scenario. It's just not, it's not the direction that libraries are going, no matter what they seem to think.
Right. And then the thought was to have one interlibrary loan librarian. I don't know all details. I don't really know if there's official plans, but like if there's just one person supporting all these
5
locations,
campuses.
when there might have been interlibrary loan staff for all of them, or more than one staff. I don't really know enough about the college system, but to have one, what if they go on vacation, or like
I
on break,
know.
or burn
No,
out.
it's not an outcome I am favoring. Yeah.
Yeah. But how does this, impact, like,
Just to sit
so
and wait and see what happens now, which is one of the most frustrating situations to be in. Like, we can provide feedback, but
Do we have any sense whether this is happening, beyond our state a lot? Because, of course, it frightens me for the whole interlibrary loan.
I've seen digital only libraries for colleges that are digital only. If there's no physical campus, then they provide the online library so that students still have a library. I am not finding a lot of libraries that are digital only for schools that still have a campus. There are some, but it's not, admittedly, I've been out of the academic library world for how long have I been here? 5 years now. So I'm not completely up to date, but it's not a trend that I've seen. There's a lot more online resources, but you still need the people and the in-person support for the students.
Absolutely.
plus it's a trainable skill. I don't know the extent of the work study program at some of these colleges in the library setting, but I don't know if any of the students helped with any of the processes or learned about the process or I guess learn about libraries in general, but or have that experience.
It's a cascading effect that's going to impact the entire state, and I don't know if that was thought of. So I guess my response is I am very disappointed, and I hope that they change their minds.
Yeah, and we're with you. Thanks
Yeah.
for opening up the discussion there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the surrounding libraries may see a increase in community members, which is great. That's great. We can welcome new
But
people.
some of the libraries don't have enough hours open to support the students, or if it's a student in a rural area with bad internet service, like there's students who live at home while they attend classes because they can't afford to pay room and board.
Or
if
books.
They're at home in a place with bad internet, they still can't get library assistance.
Right. And that's also an accessibility issue. Like one of the article I read said something about some people screens are hard, or screens maybe doing the reading, automatically is also a problem, or Yeah,
And
so
if-
it's
if you're-
accessibility and inclusion issue.
Well, and then if you have students who need to act, what happens with a book that's on reserve? You can't just scan the entire thing and put it on a website somewhere. That is very against copyright law. So there are far too many unanswered questions to have made such a drastic move with their starting deadline. Yes, and Beth and Fairley said sometimes it's hard to provide all the things students need. She tries, but they're not quite equipped for it. Academic research is not the area that public libraries are trained for.
Or the staff.
Yeah.
Right, and there's also, I know that here at the MVU Linden, that there are community members that go to those libraries as well
Mm-hmm.
and access resources there.
And the
we probably don't
collections are
have.
available through interlibrary loan for people outside of the area, and they lend a lot. Betsy, your hand's up.
Yeah, we have some patrons who heard about it on the radio yesterday and like immediately called, like completely bereft. You know, some of them are like retired professionals who do academic writing, you know, now in their retirement, and others are students, and it's like they're terrified of what it means for ILL because Middlebury does so much, but they can't do everything. And like we've had some amazing help from Vermont state colleges, and it's they're frightened.
Yes. So I know, and it's so hard where and their statements now are saying, well, we're listening to the feedback, but I don't know where that's going to go. No one saw that one coming, so yeah.
Not even the staff.
Mm-mm. All right. Any other topics? Are we going to end on a sad topic? Something that just leaves the whole
Wait,
room
we're supposed to be
quiet.
optimistic.
I know.
I was going to say we need the optimist, please.
Optimistic
Leave us
whole
with
system.
something uplifting.
Okay.
Well,
All
we
right.
just posted that Jen came walking by my desk the other day carrying this massive, probably the heaviest and largest interlibrary loan ever seen here. And it's this gorgeous book of tattoos. You tell, please.
Oh,
It's the hugest book we've ever received. I couldn't even put it on the hold shelf. It's Taschen, so it's huge and dense, and it's from like 1790 to like current day. It's beautiful. It's
that's
really
amazing.
anything big that's ever come across our desk.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, and Lee, your hand is up.
Optimistically, we don't live in Florida.
We do have that.
Florida.
Okay. So I think ending with the largest, most beautiful interlibrary loan and that we are not in Florida is a good way to wrap up. Okay. So our next meeting, I have a list of things that I'm going to send out with the meeting notes, but I want to put it in the recording that our next meeting is in May, and it is May 11th, which is a Thursday, and it will be 1 to 3 p.m. And the Teams link was put in an email earlier, but I will make sure to include that in the email summarizing this meeting as well. And I promise to not suddenly change the date again. So yes. Oh, and Kelly is sending out an ILL while we are meeting, and she loves her job. Okay. we found our optimism again. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
It's so backwards. I can't figure out where.